Well, hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Too Old for Bold Show. I'm your host, Johnny. And today I'd like to talk about judging by appearances. Now, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I've been guilty of misjudging people myself at times. But anyways, I've got to mention that sometimes it's very hard to resist judging someone by their appearance when all you have to look at is their initial appearance. Now, like as I said, I've been guilty of misjudging people, and I've been surprised by what I found. I've also been a victim of misjudgment too, and I'd like to tell you some of my experiences. Now, in the early years of our business, I did all of the work in the shop. I set up the machines, I did the shipping, set up material for the people, and swept the floors. And I'd get a little messy doing that too. Well, one day a salesman came in and he rang the bell in the foyer. There was no one in the office at the time, so I went in and answered the bell. And the salesman was well dressed, and he looked at me and in kind of a terse and condescending voice he said, "Where's John?" And I looked at him and I said, "John who?" And he said, "John Safran." And I said, "Well, I'm John Safran." And his demeanor changed in an instant. From that kind of a terse, condescending attitude, he jumped to a big smile in an instant. "Oh, Mr. Safran, how are you?" Stuck out his hand and he offered to shake hands with me. Well, my hands were dirty, and he got his hands dirty too, which I don't think he liked too much. But anyways, it was a very short call, and I learned a lesson there too, which helped me later on when I made sales calls. Well, after the business got going, I would be making the sales for our company, and I would wear a three-piece suit, and I had an Ivy League haircut. And sometimes on my lunch hour, I'd stop at a Harley dealer to look at motorcycles, because I had a Harley myself. And I can remember one instance walking into a dealership, and it was staffed by what I would call hardcore biker types. And I walked in the store, and they kind of glanced at me, and they saw this person with a three-piece suit on and a short haircut. And I was totally ignored. I walked around that dealership for about a half hour, and no one approached me and said, "Can I help you?" or anything. So I walked out. I thought it a little bit amusing. Well, later in the day, I had to get some computer ribbons for my computer. And I drove to a computer store in a mall on my Harley. I wore my leathers, and I had a bandana on. And when I walked into the store, it was mostly staffed by young people. I was totally ignored. As other people came in wearing suits or dressed much better than I was, they were waited on and so forth. And I really needed the ribbons, so I had some questions. So I finally found a salesperson. I said, "Could you please help me?" And I got kind of a rude answer. "Yeah, what do you want?" Well, I smiled and walked out. And again, I found it rather amusing how you're just judged by your appearance. Now, they didn't know that in my business I had 5 computers and printers, and I could have been a good customer for them. So I learned another lesson there. Now, there's been many stories of an old unkempt man who walks into a dealership and is treated rudely. And the man turns out to be a millionaire who could probably buy the dealership 10 times over. There's really no reason to treat people in a condescending or rude manner, because you really never know who you're talking to. Now, I'm a Harley Davidson enthusiast, and I've got several biker style tattoos. Now, what's another thing that's kind of amusing, I walk into the pool sometimes and I get some funny looks from people. Apparently they don't think too much of a person with tattoos. I remember one instance where I walked in the pool and a woman looked at me, gave me a dirty look, and shook her head. And I asked her, "What's wrong, ma'am? Did I do something?" And she said, "Ew, I would never date a man with tattoos. And I looked at her and I said, well, you know, ma'am, I wouldn't either. Well, I got another nasty look, and that was the end of that. But anyways, I hope you get my point, not to judge people by their appearance. And I want to mention something. In the last episode where I talked about slogans and sayings, I forgot to mention one episode which really hits hard with me. It's a saying that goes like this: give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach him to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Now, I don't have to elaborate much on that one, but briefly, giving the man a fish is a short-term thing that results in the man becoming dependent on you. Teaching him to fish is a permanent thing that results in the man becoming self-sufficient. Enough said on that. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'd like you to please go to the Too Old for Bull website. And you can view some of my other videos. At the end of this video is a link to the Too Old for Bull website. So see you down the trail, folks. Have a great day.